It's a live edition of the Wrap-Up Show with John Schaefer and Jim Russell, presented by Mark Nimitz at Farmers Insurance. The Padres have a manager. Before we get going, make sure to subscribe to this page. Year-round Padres content. You see Jim right there. Hit the button down below, subscribe, hit the notification bell. You'll get all of our videos. Make sure to like these videos as well. Follow us on Twitter if you're not doing that. We've got tons of Padres content for you at John Schaefer, at Jim Russell SD, not at John's Schaefer like Jim posted earlier today.
Sorry about that.
So let's get into it. Bob Melvin is the new manager. Before we do that, let's tell you about our buddy Mark Nimitz at Farmers Insurance, as we always do, our title sponsor. If you're shopping for auto, home, renters, or life insurance here in San Diego, there's one place to turn. It's to a San Diegan, Mark Nimitz at Farmers Insurance, who's a huge Padres and baseball fan. He's got a decade of experience helping people like us find the perfect insurance products, and he's just great with customer service and communication. That's really the differentiating factor with him. If you click the link down below in the description, you're going to get to Mark's website. You're going to let him help you and your family with your insurance needs.
And if you have any questions for him, if you're wondering how you can reach out to him, all his information is right here in the top corner. Phone number and email address, mnimitz@farmersagent.com. That's mnimitz, at farmersagent.com. Let's get to it, man.
Let's get to it. You get your questions in to the comment section down below, but this is an exciting day. I mean, this is a little bit out of left field, which isn't surprising. AJ Preller's done this. I mean, Andy Green was a surprise hire. Jace Tingler was a completely out of left field hire. And now Bob Melvin, who's an opposite. I mean, it's really the opposite. It's a 180 from what the Padres have done with their last couple of managers. You get a guy that is just flat out won, and he's done so with limited payroll. I mean, he's done so with one of his hands tied behind his back, obviously, in Oakland. 6 playoff appearances in the last 11 years, a veteran manager who's taken teams to the postseason 7 times. I mean, the Padres have only been to the postseason, Jim, 6 times in the franchise's history. So Bob Melvin, I mean, who would have ever thought? I mean, he's under contract with the A's. He's coming to San Diego, and I think we both agree it's a step in the right direction, and it's quite a hire by AJ Preller.
I had no idea, like no clue. I wasn't even thinking of Bob Melvin. No idea. This one shocked me for sure. And Preller's done some shocking moves as his tenure as GM, but I saw this from AJ Casvel. Huge shout out to AJ for getting that scoop.
Yep.
No idea. I was shocked that Preller pulled this off, because my first initial thought was, wait, isn't Bob Melvin under contract with the A's?
Yeah. Well,
and
we knew he was managing.
Technically he is and was, because the A's picked up his extension, or his not extension, but
his option.
His option for 2022. And I'm thinking to myself, like, did Preller make a trade for Bob Melvin because he's already employed by the A's? And then, like, moments later, it comes out that he was given permission to interview for the job, and Preller made the hire. And I have to give it to Preller. Like, I've been really hard on him. A lot of people have been hard on Preller. I can't fault him at all for this. This is a massive win for AJ Preller. Getting Bob Melvin paired with Ruben Niebla, the pitching coach now for the Padres. It's really hard for me to fault him at all. You know, everything that this team needed from a manager standpoint, credentials, experience, a guy that demands respect, a guy that all his players love, a guy that's won, everything that this team needed in the seat of a manager, you got it with Bob Melvin. Like, how can you be upset about this hire? Because yes, Oakland A's are kind of a team that nobody really pays attention to, but Bob Melvin's a hell of a manager. Taking the Oakland A's, a team with one of the worst payrolls in baseball. The ownership group is horrible there. They're talking about moving their team to Las Vegas. They get a revolving door of players every single year. He is the longest tenured manager in baseball, by the way. He's won Manager of the Year 3 times. Find me a fault with this hire. I can't.
Well, that's the thing. The other candidates, Jim, and by the way, shout out to Daniel, who said, "Why is your mic so damn big, John?" The way it looks today on this live chat, it looks larger than it actually is.
In everybody's face.
That's what she said. So, in terms of Bob Melvin, for a second, all the other candidates we heard about had red flags, right? Like what we saw on Twitter, the whole red flag phenomenon. I mean, listen, Ron Washington, we were both on board, but let's not kid ourselves. There were off-field issues that maybe have prevented him from being a manager since the Rangers. Mike Schilt was literally they needed to get an exemption to fire him during the postseason. I mean, that's how bad it was at the end. I don't know who's at fault, but there were philosophical differences. We knew about that. Luis Rojas might be a brilliant manager at some point in his career. He's not now. The Mets in 2 seasons finished in last place and in 3rd place and really underperformed in the second half of the year. Ozzie Guillen hasn't been interviewed in a decade. And his last managerial job was a complete tank job. You know, there might have been a high upside there, but there was a high downside as well. You know, 69 and 93 with the 2012 Marlins, who were supposed to be big. To your point on Bob Melvin, what is the negative with a hire like this? And you see what former players are saying. You see what former coaches are saying. Ron Washington coached underneath him after he came back into coaching from the Texas Rangers and speaks glowingly about Bob Melvin. I saw quotes from former players today speaking glowingly about Bob Melvin. I heard from someone I know that spent 2 years working for the Oakland A's, and he said that Bob Melvin is such a good communicator, he would be surprised if the Padres didn't win a World Series under his watch, that he's just beloved by coaches and players, media members, those that spend time with him. So, you know, you consider all of this, and we know it's only a manager. I mean, he's not making up 28 games in the standings, Jim. He's not. He's not going to win 107 games on his own. He's not going to win 106 games like the Dodgers did on his own. But you couple this with the universally liked hire of Ruben Niebla around baseball, and you got something going here. And AJ Preller deserves credit. We vilified him. We've been critical of AJ Preller. You
Rightfully
can't be critical here. You're right, but you really got to give him credit when he makes an unconventional hire like this, and it is unconventional. The idea that you could get a seasoned manager like Bob Melvin, you take advantage of the A's situation that they're in, which is essentially a AAA club now for the other 29 teams in Major League Baseball because of their situation. And AJ Preller, Peter Seidler, and this front office deserve credit for getting this deal done.
All right, so I'm going to bring this up here. Hold on one second. This is a piece in The Athletic. I retweeted it today. Hold on. All right, here we go. This is just an excerpt from the piece in an Athletic article. I forget when it was written, but it's been written recently. And these are just quotes from former players and coaches that have been with Bob Melvin. Bob Melvin is my favorite manager I ever played for, Jerry Bly-Levens. I loved him to death, Brandon McCarthy said.
Yeah, these are veterans.
Bob, I'll tell you, he's the best I ever coached for. Ironically, Braves third base coach Ron Washington. I love Bob Melvin. Retired outfielder Johnny Gomes has said. The players call Melvin chill and cool and stable. They gush about his forthrightness. Always reliever. Yasmiro Petit said he tells you the truth. They praise him for excluding calm. You never really saw him go off the deep end. Retired closer Grant Balfour said they thank him for treating them like adults. He lets everyone be themselves. They credit him for motivating them. We all wanted to win for him. Diamondbacks catcher Stephen Vogt says, and that's the highest compliment you can give a manager. Like, if you're looking for the checklist, the perfect checklist for what you wanted as a manager, if you're a Padres fan, there's no better endorsement than what I just read you from right there from The Athletic. There's no better endorsement. And if people were saying, well, there has to be some type of negative here. Okay, well, the only negative I can see with Bob Melvin is his playoff record. Yeah. If that's the only negative you're going to go with, great. I'd rather have that be the only negative than a negatives of he's never been a manager before. He hasn't, managed in the National League. He got fired from his job for having differences with the GM. He hasn't managed in over a decade. Like whatever else you want to say as a negative that every single one of the candidates had besides Bruce Bochy, that doesn't apply to Bob Melvin at all.
I'm glad you mentioned that, though. I brought that up on the radio today. Playoff record. Let's talk about it for a second. We've all watched and read Moneyball. We know that the whole, ideally the whole process was win it over 162, get there. It's a roll of the dice, right? You get, it's like, you get to the dance, you got to dance. And there's some luck involved in that. We all know that. We all know teams that get hot in that spot, and there's some luck associated with it. And let's be honest. I mean, the A's have not had success in the Moneyball era in the postseason. They just haven't. And Bob Melvin does have a league championship series under his belt. He got there with the Diamondbacks, of all teams, in 2007. We saw the quotes about his in-game managerial experience and how he's not going to get out-coached or out-managed in-game. That's something where I would say the Padres have been beaten each of the last 2 years. With all due respect, really, to Jace Tingler, who was an inexperienced manager. He's 10-17 as a big league manager in the postseason. It's just a fact. 10-17. It's not a good record. He had that 1 year with Arizona. They were swept out of the league championship series in 2007. They never made it past the DS in Oakland, but you're going to take it. You just got to get there. And in a 162 season, the Padres don't. I mean, they just haven't under AJ Preller for whatever reason. And 2020, listen, we all enjoyed it. It was great. Jace Tingler deserves credit for it. So does AJ Preller. But that's not how it's going to be played from here on out. You got to assume 162, even with the CBA situation. You got to think 162. You got to put your team in a position to win in 162. And Bob Melvin is going to be the guy, hopefully, to get this franchise over the hump. Is he going to be the World Series winning manager for the Padres? Nobody has any clue. I mean, to come on the air and for anyone to say that, I mean, that's ridiculous. Nobody knows. But can he be a guy to get this franchise to the postseason? Based on his track record, if you're winning with less in Oakland, why can't you win with more in San Diego? It's as simple as that. I mean, he literally won on minimum wage salaries in in the big leagues, and now he's getting this payroll. It's going to be 170 million, if not more, in 2022. So I want to praise AJ Preller for the hire. I don't want to praise AJ Preller for what happened at the trade deadline in 2021, but I said this on the radio too on Extra 1360, Jim. Sometimes you lose a battle to win a war. Nobody liked it in the moment, but if someone would have told us on the other side, you get a Hall of Fame caliber manager, maybe not a Hall of Fame manager. I said this, and I wasn't trying to be disrespectful to Bob Melvin. I called him Bruce Bochy light earlier, which I think is really a compliment to him. Winning in the shadow of San Francisco, not winning at that level, not winning at Bruce Bochy's level, but really winning at half the budget of the Giants. So I really do like the hire. Hopefully it works out. There are no guarantees, but I do. If I'm being 100% honest, I really do like the hire. When they hired Jace Tingler, I said that day I didn't like it. Today I'm saying I like the hire.
I'm with you. And if you look at his resume, his first year managing was back in 2003. He took that Seattle Mariners team.
Yeah, 90-something wins.
93 wins. They finished second in the AL West, but it was a rookie manager with the Seattle Mariners. He's won how many? He's won 4 division titles with 2 different teams. Arizona took them to the NLCS in 2007. The A's, he had a couple down years from 2015 to 2017, but won 90-plus games in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 seasons. He's took his team to 90-plus wins. He has an over 500 record as a big league manager, 3-time manager of the year. Really, the only thing missing on his resume is a World Series. He gets that. He's a Hall of Fame manager.
Yeah.
Think about that.
Yep.
If he wins the World Series, the Padres and AJ Preller just hired a Hall of Fame manager. And everybody was looking at Bochy, and including myself. He was the top of my list. I didn't even think about Bob Melvin. Like I'm sure everyone didn't think about Bob Melvin because they didn't think he was available because he was technically under contract. And if he was available, he would have been like my 1B to Bruce Bochy, my 1A. Like that's how good of a hire I think this is by AJ Preller. Now we have to see how it all plays out. And we have been fooled before by praising Preller for moves that he has made and they have not worked out. So maybe we should take a step back here and wait till we see what happens with Bob Melvin. But, it's hard to really question this hire and put any like red flags on this hire other than his postseason record. Like if we're like talking about his postseason record as a red flag, then that's fine by me. At least he's getting to the postseason.
Right. And we'd have to watch the games, Jim. I mean, how many of the 17 losses they had are because of Bob Melvin? Arguably, I'd have to watch them. Arguably 0. I mean, literally, arguably 0 of the games are on the manager. By the way, I don't know if anyone else is drinking tonight. Feel free to share that in the chat column. Nova Kombucha tonight for me.
I'm drinking sparkling ice.
In my
strawberry
San Diego State
lemonade.
glass.
Going really hard over here to celebrate the Bob Melvin hiring.
Yeah, I mean, I thought you made some really good points about the fact that you've essentially acquired a Hall of Fame manager. By the way, I think Billy Beane and that ownership group deserve credit. Well, it's been a train wreck of an organization. The idea that they granted Bob Melvin this opportunity is what they should have done. I mean, after
Mhm.
10 years, they didn't make the postseason this year. To be honest, their September wasn't good. They were well positioned for the postseason for most of the year. They didn't have a good September. There's times you just got to part ways. If
Yeah.
it just wasn't working, probably he had won so many games. The 2018 and 2019 teams were so good. I thought last year's team was really good. They had the same record as the Padres, essentially 36 and 24. So I do give credit to the A's for allowing that to happen. By the way, despite everything with the A's, and they're going to sell off parts, and their payroll is going to be lower next year, and they're going to be above 500. They're going to hire some
Oh,
nobody.
uh,
They're I mean, maybe not, maybe, but you know what's going to happen, Jim. Within 3 years, they will be. That they're not going to be. They
well,
never rebuild for that long, and
no.
it's never household names. They haven't had a franchise player in forever.
Yeah.
Um,
I,
so I
I
mean, they deserve. I feel as if the A's have done more with less than most teams in baseball. I think
mhm.
Bob Melvin and Billy Beane deserve credit for that. Now you want to see. It's a little bit of the Andrew Friedman, to be honest with you. Andrew Friedman in Tampa comes to LA, and look what happens. Now it's
Mhm.
different. You're going from GM to manager, but you love the analytical angle here. Obviously, AJ Preller loves that, and baseball ops loves that. No team is more analytical of the last 20 years than the A's. So it's like you get a
Mhm.
modern baseball man that's managed for 20 years, that's won with less. Like you
Yeah,
said, there's no guarantee it works. The Padres,
right.
if they go 79-83 next year, we're not going to blame Bob Melvin, though. We're not going to say, oh, it was Bob
No.
Melvin that put him in this spot.
No, and that's the thing, um, with this hire for Preller. What happened this past year, it was a collective failure. Preller, Tingler, the coaching staff, front office,
Players,
analytic players, like there was a lot of blame to go around that whole situation. What Preller has done now is essentially taking the questioning of his managerial hires out the window. Like I, that you're right. They could go 73 and 80 whatever next year,
89.
89. I'm not blaming the manager because everything that Bob Melvin brings to the table is exactly what this team needed. And he also has a great track record to show for it. Tingler, on the other hand, we were going off of like a Google search. We didn't know anything about this guy. And the things that happened this past year, you couldn't hang your hat on, well, he's won manager of the year 3 times. He's, he won over 1,300 games in his career. He's taken 2 teams to the playoffs. He's won 90 plus games as a manager, 4 years in his coaching career. He's been to an ALCS. Like you couldn't say that about Tingler. So you were just sitting there like, why did he make this hire, Preller? And now you have Bob Melvin. Yes, it still could go wrong next year, but I'm not blaming Bob Melvin because he has credentials. If anything, I would blame the players way more
Right.
next year than the manager.
Sure.
Like
Or
it
the
would
front
be
office.
all on the players instead
Or
of
the
Bob
front
Melvin.
office move, and the front office moves. I mean, AJ Prell's
That
got a lot
too.
of work to do.
Yeah.
Does he move Eric Hosmer or not? Does he move Will Myers or not? How does he add to this rotation, which was so susceptible in the second half of the year?
Mhm.
How does he prevent the bullpen from being taxed the way it was? How does he add to his bench, which was the
Right.
worst power bench in baseball, arguably, at least among
Mhm.
good teams? So he's got work to do. It's not impossible work. I don't think he needs to spend $100 million on Nick Castellanos or $100 million on a starting pitcher. I really don't. And I don't think they will. I think they'll be smarter. I don't think they'll make no moves. I think they will invest. I just think that they're going to be smarter this offseason. I really do. At this point, it's about fixing what went wrong and knowing that this is a critical year. It really is a critical year. And Peter Seiler, to his credit, uh, gave a vote of confidence to AJ Preller. What else can you really do?
Mhm.
And, AJ Preller, the truth is, whether you like AJ Preller or not, he's got more rope than we probably believe. He's under contract through
Yeah.
2026. I mean, nobody wants to see what happened last year happen again, and that's
Mhm.
going to change the conversation. But the truth is, he just lured a manager who, to your exact words, Hall of Fame caliber, if he had gotten to a World Series, maybe he just lured a manager for a 3-year deal. Yet we think, or we have thought, that AJ Preller's on the hot seat. He's not.
No.
He's not. Now,
No.
Bob Melvin,
No.
you could say, was in a little bit of a spot where it was a difficult spot to be in with everything going on in Oakland, but he didn't have to go. And he would have had
Mhm.
other options if he really wanted to pursue them. So AJ Preller made a move with the strength of the organization behind him. He didn't make the move as a lame duck general manager that was literally going to be a president of baseball operations for the next 6 weeks, 6 months, or 1 year. He made a move from a position of strength, probably with the backing of Peter Seidler, and this probably doesn't get done if Preller doesn't have the next 4 or 5 years, if Peter Seidler doesn't give him the public backing like that. And apparently Bob Melvin's on board. You know, we were very critical throughout the final couple of months of the regular season, but Bob Melvin sees it differently than we did a couple of months ago. And I'm kind of glad for it, to be honest with you, because I think without that public backing and without Preller having these 4 or 5 years, you wonder if you can pull a manager of this caliber.
This, to me, has the potential to save Preller's career. And by that, I mean,
At least in San Diego.
At least in San Diego and wherever he goes if he leaves San Diego, because this is a hire he could not get wrong. Like, this had to be something that worked. And I feel like Preller's going into this thinking, I have to hire somebody with the least amount of question marks, a guy that has been there, done that, who's respected, who everybody likes, who, will have players, essentially run through a wall for him. That's Bob Melvin. And you can't, I just keep going back to, like, it's very hard to question this hire at all. It could turn out to not work, but I think the upside with Bob Melvin is like World Series. Like, that to me is something that I feel better about today with this franchise than I did this morning about who potentially could be their manager.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a Padres fan, you're watching us right now, you have to be excited. I mean, what else would you want? And then people start, and we can get to some of these questions, but people say, how do you complete the staff? I mean, can you complete the staff with Luis Rojas? I mean, then you've put together this all-star staff. When you get, again, the well thought after Ruben Niebla, who's bilingual, you could maybe bring in a Luis Rojas, who's very highly thought of, even though he's only 40 years of age. He's related to Moises Alou, right? You got the Bob Melvin respect card already, who's won. He's going to get the credibility in the clubhouse. Like, completing the staff's going to be interesting. Who knows? Skip Schumacher, we talked to him on the wrap-up show just a couple of days ago. I mean, maybe Skip Schumacher would still potentially have an opportunity with the Padres to return in 2022.
Yeah.
And I thought Skip said some things, and if you missed that interview, you need to catch it. And if you haven't subscribed to this channel, you need to do so, because we've got interviews with Skip Schumacher. We've got everything on this managerial search. We're going to look at free agency and hot stove. Just hit that subscribe button, because we've got year-round content for you. So make sure to hit that button. Skip Schumacher, I don't think he said these exact words, Jim, but he did say that there's something to be said about experience, right? And you can only get experience by getting experience. Like, it wasn't Jace Tingler's fault he didn't have a certain amount of experience. It's not Skip Schumacher's fault that he doesn't have the experience of previously being a big league manager either. But there's something to be said about the experience of having played in the big leagues, having managed in the big leagues, that I think is going to bring a level of credibility to the Padres 26-man roster that they didn't have these last 6 years. That's not Andy Green's fault. He didn't hire himself. No. It's not Jace Tingler's fault. It really isn't. But now that they're getting to this point, they need someone in there that, if you're trying to win a World Series, you've got to have that manager that's been through it all. He's seen the ups and the downs, and I think Bob Melvin is more of that man than Jace Tingler is today, just today.
You have stability now. You have proven track record stability for the manager spot in San Diego. When's the last time you could say that? Bochy?
Yes. Maybe I was like a Buddy Black, but I don't know.
Yeah. Ironically, it is kind of funny. Not funny, but, Bochy was the last guy who brought this team to a playoffs in a full 162-game season. And he didn't get fired by the Padres. He left the Padres similarly like Bob Melvin left the A's to come to San Diego. A little bit of parallels there. Like, the Oakland A's didn't lock up Bob Melvin. He goes on to have better success somewhere else. Hopefully that happens. I just like the fact, like you mentioned earlier, Mike Schilt, he could be a good manager in the future, but he got fired. Luis Rojas could be a good manager in the future. He got fired. Ozzie Guillen, This is his first interview in 9 years. He could be a good manager someday, but he hasn't even been interviewed for anything in 9 seasons. Who else we talked about? Ron Washington.
Mm-hmm.
He left his job. He hasn't been a manager since. He's been a third base coach.
Mm-hmm.
Ironically, he's the first job he came back after he left the Rangers organization was with the A's with Bob Melvin as a third base coach. So, you don't have to worry about, well, why did this guy leave Oakland? Well, the guy left Oakland because, one, the ownership sucks there. Two, he probably didn't want to deal with the payroll that they had. Three, they're potentially moving to Las Vegas. Four, you have no idea.
Fans.
The
stadium
sucks.
situation is a disaster. They win. No franchise wins with less than the Oakland A's.
Well, maybe the Rays, but at least the Rays have Kevin Cash and he's a stable manager. But still, the ownership group there is, I don't know, whatever. But anyway, you have no idea what's going to happen with the future of Billy Beane. We don't know how long Preller, depending on what happens in the future here, if this team starts winning or losing, what's going to happen with Preller. But Bob Melvin's now coming to a place where he has the best player in baseball in Fernando Tatis Jr. He has one of the best third basemen in baseball in Manny Machado. He has an ownership group willing to spend money. That didn't happen in Oakland. He has one of the best, if not the best ballparks to play in and be at every single day in San Diego at Petco Park. He has a GM who will swing for the fences as many times as he possibly can. And oh, by the way, I don't think we've mentioned this yet. What's going to happen next year to the National League, John? It's going to turn into an American League style of play with potentially the DH.
Which I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'm enamored with that, to be honest with you, from the Padres' perspective today, just because of their lack of power off the bench. And I don't know who screams. Yeah, I don't know who screams DH. To be honest with you, I kind of like Melvin as a National League manager, based on the fact that he managed for 5 years with Arizona. I feel like the Padres are somewhat susceptible in National League style games where they were losing chess matches. Not every night, but they did lose sometimes on double switches and decisions made in the National League style game, where I feel like Bob Melvin, I saw the quotes today saying he's not getting outmanaged in game. That's not going to happen with Bob Melvin. Now I'm with you. And I'm with you, by the way. I'd prefer to see the universal DH. I'd prefer to see Luis Campusano get a couple hundred at bats. I prefer to get Manny Machado a blow and not have to miss the game and to get 4 plate appearances. Same thing with Tatis. Get the blow, but still get the 4 plate appearances. The Padres do have that advantage. The Machados and the Tatises give them 10 or 15, 20 games and they can DH. Let's get to questions because we literally have a million. We probably have 10 or 15 minutes. Pull up some questions. Again, if you haven't subscribed to the Wrap Up Show, please do so. Exclusive year-round Padres content, but let's get to some of these questions. Bob Melvin is the new manager of the Padres.
I can't even scroll all the way up because I just can't. Okay, this is a good one to start out. The GOAT, Mark Nimitz. Yes, shout out Mark Nimitz.
Yes.
Farmers Insurance. Any questions? Right here. All this information.
Yeah, I mean, after last year, you might want life insurance because you were watching the Padres in the second half of the season. Maybe this year you want, a little bit of auto, home, life, whatever.
Here we go from Leon. We went from Jace Tingler to Bob Melvin. What an upgrade. That's as big of an upgrade. And look, we can criticize Jace Tingler as a manager, as a person. He's amazing. As a manager, this is a massive upgrade.
Yeah, it is. And he did well in 2020, but he didn't do well in 2021. He would say the same thing. He's not a great communicator. He said that at the end of the year, and all we hear about Bob Melvin is he's an unbelievable communicator. So I think that is an upgrade. And hopefully Jace Tingler learns from it and is successful moving forward somewhere, even if it's in the Padres organization or elsewhere.
Any concern about Bobby Boy being an AL manager? I think we just talked about that. None whatsoever.
Because he's managed the National League as well, but none.
None. Zero. Ben Ruiz, let's go.
Yeah.
Yes, let's go.
Yeah. How many days till spring training?
Exactly. Cliff, the GOAT. I don't know who he's talking about there.
Maybe Bob.
Maybe. Frank, Melvin, and Niebla, massive W's.
Yeah.
I have to give it to, I have to stand up and applaud these 2 hirings. They could not work, but the amount of question marks you have with Melvin and Niebla are very few. And that's what I like when you make hires in big spots, like your manager, pitching coach. You want to have the least amount of question marks that you can. And with these two guys, like, it's very hard to find faults with these two hires.
And by the way, Niebla, obviously a dream job right now. He's
Yeah.
from nearby. He resides in San Diego. His daughter goes to San Diego State. I mean, this is obviously a job he really desired and wants, and it could work out very well for the Padres. Bob Melvin, by the way, Northern California guy. I think it is probably advantageous that we're still in the state of California. He's not going to Kansas City
Right.
or
Yeah,
Milwaukee or
stay home.
Philadelphia. I think there's something there. It's not forever from, right? He went to Cal. He's from Berkeley. He's managed in the Bay Area. You know, San Diego's not a world away from the Bay Area, as we know.
It's a nice place to go. Like,
there's worse landing spots.
Exactly.
Like the other 29 teams.
Yeah. Is this the best managerial hire in Padres history?
Well, they hired Bruce Bochy.
At the time, Bochy was a no-name.
Sure, absolutely. But he did prove it on field, and he did. Even though he won in San Francisco, he did prove it here.
I think the question is, at the time of the hire,
that's interesting. We'd have to go back.
Jack McKeon.
What did people think of the Larry Boa hire? I don't know. I mean,
as far as credentials go,
it's got to be right up there.
It's hard to argue, really. Like, that's a really good question. It's hard to argue that at the time of the managerial hirings for everybody in Padres history, that this isn't the best as far as just pure credentials, not the person, the name, credentials coming in to be the next manager of the team. It's hard to say this isn't the best. Like, I'm probably missing maybe a couple, but like Jack McKeon is the last guy this team has hired that had previous managerial experience, which is insane.
Is that right? I didn't realize that. Is that right?
The last manager that this franchise hired with prior or previous managerial experience was Jack McKeon. Think about that. Bochy, no managerial experience. Buddy Black, no managerial experience. Andy Green, no managerial experience. Jace Tingler, none. Think about that.
And by the way, Jack McKeon, when he was hired to manage the Padres, had never reached the postseason.
This is the best hire.
He had been successful in Kansas City, but he had never reached the postseason. He would do so afterwards with Cincinnati and the Marlins.
That's okay. So this is the best hire.
Yeah.
This is the best hire in Padres history. Credentials go. Chip rocks. Padres wrap-up show. Well, this was unexpected. I was expecting to bass AJ for the next 6 months. I'm actually happy with Melvin, even though my first choice was Bochy. I'm the same way. My first choice was Bochy as well, but I couldn't be happier with Bob Melvin as a manager. Like, I couldn't
believe it. When I was very surprised. I said, "What do you mean it's Bob Melvin? Who did they trade?
I was shocked.
How did they acquire him?"
I had no idea.
Yeah.
It's
hard to fault. I spoke glowingly of him for an hour on the radio this afternoon. I said, "Listen, the playoff record is the playoff record," and my answer is no. I don't know what that means, but they recognize that there are some moves that are necessary there, and it could be as easy as not resigning Tommy Pham, or it could be real work, which is moving Eric Hosmer or Will Myers.
I think all three are back.
You do at the start of the year?
Yeah.
I don't see the motivation to sign Tommy Pham. I really don't. I mean, I think it's affordable.
Cheap.
But is there a strong desire? I mean, I guess to get that veteran piece back on a flyer deal because he hasn't performed.
Yeah.
I don't know,
All
man.
right,
2 years.
Let's move on.
What have we seen?
I love the hire, but what about the Latino presence they were supposed to be looking for? It's still not done yet.
Out in the Niebla, maybe Rojas.
Yeah. And it's not like it's a prerequisite that you need to have a Latino presence as a bench coach, but they're not done. They're not even close to done. This year. Awesome hire. When do they report? That's a good question.
Soon.
I think it's February 1st.
It's not that far away. I mean, it's only a couple of months away.
Right. Tom, wow, guys. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Wow is indeed a good word to use. Let's see here. Lived in Oakland, and Bob Melvin is so beloved here. He wins with players that nobody has ever heard of. This hire is the best ever. Only Bochy would have got me as excited. I'm with you, Taco Bell. Call 911. I'm with you, man. I trust me. I know I have friends that are Oakland A's fans. They feel the same way. He is beloved for Oakland A's fans and those players. like
Yeah, and not just
beloved.
that, people that have worked there. I know, like I said, I talked to someone that worked for the A's for 2 years earlier today. I know someone else that has worked in media for the A's for a handful of years at least, and really speaks highly of Bob Melvin just in general. So I don't think it's
Mhm.
just fans, and I don't think it's just players or coaches. I just think he's universally respected,
Yeah.
and I think he's gonna really I think it works here. I really do believe that it's going to work here. Not to say there's not going to be, and not to say it's going to be easy. Giants and Dodgers make
Won't
it
be.
tough. They really do. They
But
really do. But
but
he's
the
going to
thing
have some
about
leash
that
too. Also, he's not. It's not going to be one and done.
the thing about that is looking at the Dodgers and Giants. They had a considerable advantage at the manager spot. That's
Mhm.
not the case anymore. Like they are on equal playing fields. If
Sure.
not, I would put Bob Melvin. I know that Dave Roberts has won a World Series and
Hmm.
Gabe Kapler was just won 107 games with the Giants, but it's hard to argue that Bob Melvin isn't on that level too.
Yeah, I agree. Do you know what Bob Melvin was making? By the way, did you see his salary?
No, what
Reported
is
at
he making?
$4 million a year. So
It's a lot.
another motivation for Oakland to move on because they don't need
Hmm.
to pay a manager $4 million
No.
a year. They could literally save $3 million a year. And I don't know what the
Yeah.
Padres are paying Bob Melvin, but I'd be surprised if it was less than he was making in Oakland. So you might be looking at
6.
$3 years, $15 million, something like
Hmm.
that, where Jace Tingler and Andy Green were not making that kind of money. So another reason to credit Peter Seidler. Forget about
Yes.
AJ Preller for a
Hmm.
moment. If you're
Yeah.
throwing 3 years, $15 million at your manager after throwing 3 years, $3 million at your manager, you're vested and invested in this franchise right now.
Yeah. I'm pumped, man. Like this to me, I was worried. Not gonna lie. I was worried that it was gonna go the route of inexperience, the route of no name, the route of a guy that's been out of baseball for a long time. Would have been great to cover Ozzie Guillen, but a lot of question marks there. This to me, while it feels very safe, it also feels like a home run.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's the home run without like question marks and red flags. Let's
Yeah.
get to like a handful more.
All right. I wanted Bochy, but if I knew Melvin was available, he would have been my number one home run hire by Preller. Let's go rapid fire here.
Yeah,
What made Preller even think he could get an interview with Melvin, who was still under
good
contract?
question.
That's amazing, and they kept it very tight-lipped.
Yep.
Let's see here, 60-year-old manager
Yeah, it's
feels like a
young.
young
Young age. Yeah.
60-year-old.
He just turned 60 today.
Yeah,
And I said this earlier. He could manage for 10 years. Remember, AJ Preller told Marty Caswell, hey, we think Jace Taylor could be our manager for the next decade. Well, actually, their manager for the next decade could be Bob Melvin because he's
exactly.
only 60. And in this game, you got managers in their 70s winning World Series like Dusty
Hmm.
Baker.
Yeah. Melvin going to convince Preller to get Matt Olson. That's an intriguing
A
name.
lot of
Sean
Matt Olson talk
Mania,
today.
good time to try and double down with player
Yeah.
acquisition. Let's see here. This is a criticism, but this is another AJ Preller winning the offseason like he has
Hmm.
the past 8 seasons.
Fair.
Okay,
That's
it's
fair.
fair.
Yep.
Gotta wait till see that. Let's see here. A lot of people are asking about bench coach options. Do you think Schumacher stays? I hope he stays for selfish
Yeah, I do
reasons.
too. I'm a big fan, especially after we spoke with him at length for probably 30 or 40 minutes the other day. I'm a big fan. I feel like he'll have a lot of options if I'm being honest. I think he's
Hmm.
highly regarded. I think he's a future manager. I really do.
Yeah.
I hope he stays, but these coaches were given the opportunity to look elsewhere. He's going to be coveted. I promise you that. Skip
Hmm.
Schumacher, if he doesn't stay, has a job in 2022. I promise you that.
100%. Let's go here. I'd be happy with Rojas as the bench
Yeah, me
coach. Thank
too.
you, Daniel. Love the signing. Love it. Um, Bob Melvin is 6 foot
Yes.
4.
Did you see that? He's huge compared to
Massive,
Chase Tingler.
massive presence. And I'm not going to dock anybody for their height either. Sorry about that. Melvin has so much experience. It's insane. Yeah. It's when you look at his resume, it's really good. It's a funny one. I'm gonna have to watch some of his post game commentary to make sure he doesn't use the word battle.
I don't even know if they have post game commentary in Oakland.
I know they have
who's
like
who's he talking to?
nobody.
Yeah,
We need leadership, and that is what Bob Melvin gives you
and
exactly.
Bob Melvino.
And well, yeah, exactly. Bob Melvino too. The A's 21
Yeah,
payroll was 89 million. It's 23rd of 30 teams. Yet the A's were legitimate playoff contenders. They won 86 games past year. I think
yeah.
86. Yeah,
Padres was double that, by the way, this past
right,
year, right
right.
around 177 or something.
Let's see here. This is funny. Time to get players from the A's.
You have to be cautious dealing with the A's, by the way. I
Right.
mean, Billy Bean is there.
Hmm.
But you're right. I think the A's are absolutely selling off parts. Their payroll will not be 89 million next year. It'll be
Right.
60 million
Hmm.
next year, but you need to be careful with the A's.
Hmm. Ben says if you would have said Bob Melvin was available at the beginning of the search, he would
Oh,
have been the
yeah.
top. Oh,
Yeah.
100%.
Higher than top 3. He would have been top 2. He would have been with Bruce Bochy as top
Top
2.
one. Like
Yeah.
you have a tier. We talked about tiers. It's Bochy and Melvin. That's
Yeah.
the top.
Right, because Ron Washington, I love Ron Washington. He's universally beloved, but he hasn't managed since 2014, and Bob Melvin is managing right now and winning.
Hmm. Hartman's wine. No, we're not.
Okay. Oh, what he's drinking, Hartman's wine.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Yeah. I need to get another
Um,
kombucha after this.
let's see here.
My wife is drinking White Claws. What's Sarah drinking? Is she drinking that?
No, she's not drinking anything. Gaming in Frames is drinking white tea, which has 3 times the antioxidants. I can't
Antioxidants.
antioxidants of green tea. Tomorrow's alcohol.
Interesting. I'm a tea guy.
Okay.
That's interesting.
Honestly, for those guys saying watching with the bench coach, I don't like that he wants to be second, or I don't think he wants to be second.
Yeah.
I think he wants to be manager. Hey,
Why
maybe
would you leave?
Oakland. Maybe he's a good spot for Oakland.
Yeah, maybe. Why would you leave if you're not managing? You're staying in Atlanta, in my opinion. You're taking a lateral bench coach job
Well, no, I meant like as the
to
manager.
manage. Oh no,
Ron
I'm saying,
Washington.
but yeah, in the idea that you're going
Oh
from
yeah,
bench
yeah.
coach for the Padres to from
Right.
third base
For a
coach,
job you interviewed to be manager 2 years ago.
right?
Michael, love this hire. Exactly what I wanted. Experienced manager, and Tingler can go back to Texas for all
Hmm.
okay. A lot of people were asking for Matt Olson.
Yep.
Let's see here. Rojas as bench coach.
Mm-hmm.
Matt Olson would be amazing. He was promised great weather in San Diego. Let's see here. Couple more. 2 more. Okay. Let's see what we got. Only question: if he is a top coach, why they let him leave? I know A's are lowering salary and coaches won, but shouldn't you at least try to keep a top level coach?
Classic
Answer that?
rebuild. Classic
Yeah.
rebuild.
Yeah.
When you got to know when, and they've done it really well. Billy Bean knows when to do it. You got to know when to fold. That's what they're doing. They need to reinvent it. They need to start over to some extent. That's what they're doing. Why spend $4 million if you're going to win 70 games when you can spend $950,000 and win 68 games, right? I mean, they're not.
Yeah.
If they didn't make the postseason this past year and they're selling off parts, it's unlikely they'll
Mhm.
make the postseason next year.
And also the amount of credibility that Bob Melvin has garnered over the last decade plus with the Oakland A's, I'm sure he probably went to Billy Bean and was like, look, man, I understand what's going on here. I know you picked up my option for 2022, but there's an opportunity for San Diego. And I'm sure Billy Bean was like, doing him a solid because they're probably extremely close. When you work with a guy for over a decade, you're close with them. So this is also going to be a situation where, Billy looked at Bob and was like, all right, I'll give you a solid.
Pull up that Caden Zimmerman real quick, because
All
that's a
right.
good point. I didn't think of it from that perspective. Washington would come here because he has that relationship with Melvin. That's a good point. Melvin gave him the job after he was fired, after he was out of baseball. So maybe. I mean, that's a
Maybe.
possibility I hadn't considered, and I think
Building
it's a
the
good point.
dream team in San Diego.
Dream staff.
One more. Oh, where'd it go? Oh, here we go. This hire is so good that the front office is already considering changing the name to the San Diego Melvins, and I'd be okay with that. Just saying. Again, like this hire, you can try to fault it, and you can have question marks, absolutely. But the amount of question marks with Bob Melvin compared to every single other candidate other than Bruce Bochy, there's no comparison. There's none. This is the hire that potentially saved AJ Preller's job in San Diego. That's how I look at it.
I mean, what a day. I was very surprised. I really was surprised, especially that we got it right now, and the hire that they made. So we're going to cover this over the course of the next handful of days throughout this offseason. What's next? I mean, what's the introductory press conference like? What does the staff look like? What are the free agent decisions the Padres need to make? And there are so many of those. And if you haven't subscribed to this channel, that's the reason to do it. We're covering the Padres all year long right here on the Padres Wrap-Up Show YouTube channel. Hit the subscribe button, hit that notification bell, like these videos. If you're here with us live, if you're watching the replay, please like these videos and follow us on Twitter at John Schaefer, at Jim Russell SD. Let me tell you about our title sponsors well before we duck out here. Mark Nimitz, who is a huge baseball fan here in San Diego of the Padres. And if you're shopping for auto, home, renters, or life insurance, there's only one guy to look to in San Diego. It's Mark Nimitz at Farmers Insurance. So much experience will help you find the perfect insurance product. He's got great customer service and communication. I was just in his office the other day. Just a terrific guy. You can click the link down below. You'll get to Mark's website. Let him help you and your family with your insurance needs.
And if you are wondering how you can reach out to him, all his information is above my head. Phone number and email address, mnimitz@farmersagent.com. That's mnimitz@farmersagent.com.
Thanks for watching. We're going to do it again soon. We're doing it essentially every single day here on the Wrap-Up Show. This is the Wrap-Up Show presented by Mark Nimitz at Farmers Insurance.